What's up, everybody? We're back with more conversation with Brooklyn with my man Morris Chestnut. So I wanted to ask you, man, um, like, what are some of your inspirations? Like, what inspires you to, either in the beginning to keep going, or things that inspire you now that you've reached a certain plateau to even continue beyond where you are right now?
So things that inspire me, I really get inspired by good work. When I see a performance, and obviously Denzel Washington is incredible, when I see a performance that he does, and I just know what it takes to do a lot of the stuff that he does, being in every scene, he doesn't take a scene off. That type of stuff, from a creative standpoint, is inspirational. But everything for me really comes down to, my family and lifestyle. That's what really gets me going.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because as actors, like when you're first starting out, trying to get that first job, I mean, there's a 99% rejection rate. Like,
Yeah.
usually they say,
Yeah.
you've been told 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
One time that you book one that you like, yes, it fires you up to keep you going.
Right.
So in the beginning, like, how did you deal with rejection?
Mm-hmm.
The failures, the mistakes. Like, we'll go to an audition. Like you said earlier, we'll prep real hard. We have an idea of what that you want to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get there, you perform it in the audition, and then it's crickets. You don't hear nothing, and
Right.
you're going home going, man, I should have said that line like this.
Right.
I was, you know what I mean? So how did you deal with that initially?
So that's a good question. So for me, a lot of it, I'm extremely honest with myself, right? And what it took, so I'll give you an example. So, not an example, but it's a situation. I was working at the bank, and I asked my manager, said, I want to go to this audition? He goes, oh, you're acting. Because people don't realize, sometimes people are trying to be encouraging, but it can be discouraging. So there were a couple of things early on. One was I was working at the bank, and I asked my manager, I said, listen, can I go to this audition? Just give me a little time off. She goes, yeah, it's just, she let me off. About a week after that, maybe 2 weeks after that, she says, hey, so how did you ever get it? And I said, no, I didn't get it. They went with someone else. And she said, I'll never forget it. And she was sweet. She was very nice. She said, you know what? Listen, she said, when you're done with the acting thing, we'd love to have you here. We love you here. We'd love to keep you here. There's always a place for you here. And it was like, and she was, she was saying something nice but she was basically telling me when you fail,
Right.
So at that point, I never told people when I was doing something, only on a necessary basis. And to this day, I have friends who tell me, dude, you never tell me, hey man, I saw this show you on. That's just always been me. And so I've always dealt with that, myself. I've always kept everything to myself. Even like it's funny when I think about actors in New York, always on the subways, going to auditions. And I went to New York. I flew to New York a couple of times for auditions. My personal time in my car is when I'm either beating myself up, being really honest with myself. In my car in LA has been such a personal time for me, listening to music as encouragement. I've just always had to encourage myself. I'll beat myself up, then encourage myself. I have my little pity parties by myself. I have my pity party. If I didn't get it, I have a little pity party for a day or whatever, and then that's over with. The next day you got to move on. I've just always been resilient, and I've had, I can say I've had I have a short memory for either way. I don't get too high, I don't get too low. I just kind of keep it even keel.
Right. It's wild that you say that, man. So my mom,
Mm-hmm.
love her to death, right?
Mm-hmm.
It got to a space where she would ask me if I had an audition.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm similar to you. I don't like talking about auditions. If there's an actual job, okay, cool. This is what I'm gonna be doing. But she asked me about an audition, and and I thought it went well. And she said, "Did you get it?" And I said, "Nah, similar to you, they went with somebody else." She said, "I knew that was gonna happen."
Ooh.
And when I tell you, it was like a dagger in my heart. Right? I was like, ooh. And I kept it calm because I knew she didn't really understand, right? And I said, "You know what, Mom? I'm gonna not talk to you about my acting." She said, "Well, why?" I said, "Because 9 out of 10 times you're gonna get told no. And I have to deal with that rejection on a daily basis.
Without a doubt.
And I don't need that coming from you. Like, if anything, I need you to be the one person that holding on to that 1% of hope that it does come through, right?" I said, "So we can talk about other stuff." She was like, "No, I'm so sorry. I'll make an adjustment. I see you trying so hard, and I just really want it so bad for you." And I was like, "Nobody wants it worse than I do. So, but if that will help the situation, we can talk about anything else." When I tell you, she became the most encouraging, supportive person. But it took that kind of conversation because, like you said, people don't really understand how hard this thing is.
They don't. They really don't.
How challenging it is. And then the people closest to you, and I hate when they say it's a thing.
It's a thing, meaning what?
Thing you do.
Oh, right. right. Yeah, right.
Mothering thing you're doing.
Right. All right.
You're a mom or not. Either you're acting or you're not.
Right.
So that's wild, man. So
to that point, and see what it did allow me, because even people who are rooting for you, like your mother, your sister, your brother, your best friend, or whatever, it's when I'm done with it, I kind of want to forget about it, whether I get it or not. Hopefully I'll get the call back. And it's hard. You can't just forget about it, especially if you're going and you did a good job. You're thinking about it. But I don't want to go in there and then a week later, if I didn't get it, hey man, hey Mo, did you get it, man? Hey, you get it? I don't want that constant reminder. I want to move on to the next. Whether I get it or not, I want to move on to the next.
Fatherhood.
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
2.
2. My father passed away when I was 18, 19. And I found it to be a struggle to learn how to be a man, to learn how to be self-sufficient, how to create. And I hear a lot of times in our community that a lot of times our parents think they're done with us when we turn 18.
18, right.
And it's like, actually, no, that's the beginning. So for you being a dad, and I don't know the type of relationship you have with your father, you can expound on that, but as a father, like how does that work for you? Like, clearly you have to role model the things that you want your children to be like, obviously be an example. But like, what is that for you?
That's an interesting thing. So when I talk about lifestyle and being in this industry, so I played high school football, and my father, so some of the games, so starting off at JV, your games are like right after school. My father was a blue collar worker. He was never ever to be there. Okay. So one of the things that drove me was like, I want to be at my son's games. I want to be at my son's games, right after high school. Like, he's playing freshman, whatever, baseball, basketball, is right after school. If I'm working 9 to 5, most of the time you can't make it. So that was one of the things that this industry kind of would allow me to do that. So it turns out that my son really wasn't into sports. And it was tough because I'll never forget. As soon as we got to this area, I went to the Y. I said, okay, I want to put my son in basketball. So he's not old enough yet. The second he was old enough, I went down to the Y. I want to put my son in basketball. He always hated it. He never wanted to go. And of course, it was a situation to where I was like, well, it's for him. I know it would be good for him in the long run, but if he doesn't want to do it, I tried to force him for a little while. He didn't want to do it. I revisited it back when I was coaching a local basketball team when he was in elementary school. He was 6th grade. He was on the team. He never wanted to go in the game. I was a coach.
Okay.
And he never wanted to go in the game. You know, most of the time, the coach is playing his son over as someone who's worthy of it.
Right.
But my son, I have an opportunity to play, and he don't want to play. And so it turned out that so he just wasn't into it. And he didn't get into it until high school. Now, my relationship with my father, a couple of times he was, like I said, my father, he was a blue collar worker, but he was also an entertainer. He was always on the road. He was trying to do different things. And so one of the things that I was a latchkey kid. My mother worked, my father worked. I'd come home, nobody at the house, my brother, my sister, whatever. So that's why it was so important for me to have a wife who I could trust at the house, because I didn't have that. And what I didn't have with my father, because he was always gone, I wanted to be that for my son. But, you know, life has a way of, like, all the things that I want to talk to my son about and let him know, it's like it's not that he rejects it. It's just that, I mean, even to this day, he does things his own way. And I'll be like, son, I'll try to talk to him about it. So try to push him in the right direction, and I'll push him in the direction, but he's kind of goes on his own path. So when you talk about fatherhood, the interesting thing about fatherhood for me, relating it to my father, all the things that, and my father was great for me. I love my father, and we obviously, unfortunately, he's passed away as well. So I try to be there for my son in ways that my father wanted to be for me, but he couldn't. But, you know, it's almost as if my son, he would have been cool if I was just like my father. You know, occasionally being there for him, occasionally letting him know some stuff, like, because he just hasn't been that. Because every time I try to talk to him and give him advice, he's just not trying to hear it.
You know what's wild about that is, like, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player, arguably, probably can't give his son advice about basketball. He's probably like, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I could probably say the same thing. Hey, you need to get back on the. Okay, coach.
No, that's a good point.
Dude, I used to coach James Worthy's daughter, and when she was in the 8th grade, right? James Worthy would come to practice and be like, Coach, if you need me, you need some help, you know, I'm here, right? And I'll be like, all right, cool, thank you. Now, he would walk off, right? And I'll be thinking to myself, dude, James Worthy's a 3-time NBA champion. I played college basketball a little bit overseas. Like, I don't know how to use that information. Like, these are 8th grade girls. So I would catch myself like, can you show that girl how to do left-hand layups? And he'd be like, all right, cool, right? He'll go down there showing them, and then me and the assistant, I'll be like, dude, I have a Hall of Famer showing her how to do left-hand layups. I don't know how to utilize this kind of power. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just really interesting how I've seen that with a lot of my friends' children, that I can't tell them nothing.
You're right.
You know, but then Uncle Brookie can come say, hey, you know what? Okay, got it. And they're like, dude, I just told you the same thing.
Right.
So, and
to that point, it was interesting because, and I understood what he was saying, but Charles Barkley used to always say, I'm not a role model. He used to always say, I'm not a role model. And yes, but he is. And it's not because parents can't raise their kids the right way. It's because sometimes I think, and I feel, just looking at my own kids, right? And including myself, when you're telling one person something from the time that they're born to they're 18, 19 years old, right? They just don't want to hear it. It's like white noise to them. And someone who they respect outside of the family, and even in different ways, because it's as a parent, I'm always trying to be encouraging. You know, I never try to lie to my kids, but to encourage them, you know, maybe I wouldn't be blunt, tell them the blunt truth. Like, like my daughter, she used to, my daughter didn't want to play sports either.
Okay.
And so when she was on the basketball team one year, and it was, you know, she never played sports before. And the school that she went to was just so brutal. And she would go into the game, and it was to the point, and I love her to death, but it was to the point, literally, she never played. So I'm saying never played.
Mm-hmm.
So when she would go in there, she wouldn't even really know if she was defending or yeah, on offense, right? And and to encourage her, I was like, well, sweetheart, it's just good that you went out there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's hard to tell it's good when you're out there, but when other kids are like, yo, Paige, you're this, you're that, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's confusing to them sometimes. It's like, so it starts to question, are my parents really telling me the truth? Because my dad's telling me it's good that I went out there. And it was good that she went out there. But I just have it was good that you went out there because it was something that you had a fear of doing,
Right.
not because you were good at it. But it's those confusing messages to where sometimes I think it's the message gets through to kids from outside external sources better than the internal sources sometimes.